Hello, all. We've had such a wonderful beginning to our morning, haven't we? Had such wonderful music, meditation, and daily word. So let's take a moment right now to just allow ourselves to breathe that in, to just enjoy, to absorb this wonderful morning that we have already experienced. So for those of you who read the eBlast newsletter or who heard the announcement last week, today is International World Friendship Day. What a wonderful excuse to reach out and connect with others, extending your hand and opening your heart. So what does extending the hand of friendship have to do with being an expression of the divine? Or what does it have to do with being a good Christian in whatever form that word means for you? Here in Unity, we view ourselves as first century Christians, not tied up in doctrine or the debates of the later church, but following the teachings of Jesus Christ, the great example. His teachings, which were clean and simple and obvious, and divine guidance for us. In Matthew, we are told that Jesus said, "I am hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. Truly, I tell you, insofar as you did it for one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it for me." So extending that hand of friendship is inclusive. It's feeding, it's listening, it's being with, it's taking care of. And to be truly inclusive does not stop at inviting everyone to the party. It goes beyond that. It goes beyond to asking everyone to dance. The first one is more passive, almost a courtesy, where the second one is engaged. It's an act of truly embracing. And here at Unity the Keys, we do a great job of embracing. We have a wonderful program called the Prayer Partner Program. You heard Aaron even mentioned that earlier. It was introduced by our Reverend Emeritus, late Evelyn Casper, over 20 years ago. And at the beginning of every year, we create a ritual in the Sunday service and invite those who are present or online to be part of the program that year. And we open up time for people to fill out a little form with their name and how they'd like to be contacted. And if they have a prayer request, what they would like held in prayer that year. And then the ushers collect those forms and mix them up, and the basket is passed again, and everyone chooses a name. And so you choose a name of someone that you're holding in prayer, and someone else has chosen your name. And we encourage people that before the service is over, before they leave for the day, that they let the person know whose name they drew, that they'll be holding them in prayer throughout that year. Well, some individuals text affirmations to the person of the name that they selected, maybe every week or every few weeks. Sometimes there's phone calls, sometimes they decide to meet up, or sometimes they just touch base when they see each other at church and remind one another that they're holding them in prayer. Then the following year, we go through that process again, and new names are selected. However, I've been privy to the fact that not everyone releases their person, the name that they selected, when the new year comes around. They simply keep adding names to their prayer list. What a wonderful practice. We do this out of friendship, out of love. We have the opportunity to connect, perhaps with someone we don't even know very well. We have the chance to get to know them better, connecting with them in this special way, holding a prayer for them that is important to them. And I'll be speaking to someone and mention another member of the community, and they'll say, "Oh, yes, she's my prayer partner this year." Or, "Oh, he drew my name as a prayer partner a few years ago." These wonderful connections all over the community. Can you imagine a greater gift to give someone than the gift of prayer? Jesus was very clear about our commitment to one another. The Gospel of John, he says, a new command I give to you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. And praying for one another is a beautiful way to love, extending the heart of friendship. It goes beyond the hand. Now we're moving into the heart, and we do a great job of that here. We can look at that loving one another on a spectrum, so to speak. And in my travels, I've had the opportunity to visit many unity communities. Some do a really great job of loving one another, almost to the point of the expense of everyone else. They fail to extend their circle, almost like there's little groups that are extending love within that group, but they forget to invite people to stay for snacks or just to connect with them. And then at the other end of the spectrum, I've had the receiving end of being followed out to the parking lot to my car. You'll come back next Sunday, right? Well, we want balance, remembering to honor a person's space and comfort. So last week, I said to a first-time couple, I hope we see you again. That's not what I meant to say, because even that can instill guilt, and we don't do guilt in unity. I can just imagine them saying, oh, that poor minister, she hoped we'd be back, but we're going to the beach. So a cleaner statement might have been to say, please join us again anytime, or you are always welcome here. That's the message that we want to give everyone who walks through our doors. And it's fairly easy to extend that hand of friendship within these walls, within the comfort and the security of our church home. But let's take a moment to turn again to Scripture about what it might say about extending that hand of friendship. So I'm looking at the Gospel of Luke, and we're looking at the parable of the Good Samaritan. And I know you all are familiar with this. A lawyer was trying to trick Jesus into saying something against Jewish law. So the lawyer was asked, when told to love his neighbors, well, who is my neighbor? And that's when Jesus shared the parable. He said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves who stripped him of his clothing and wounded him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a certain priest came down that road. And when he saw him, he passed by on the other side, likewise a Levite. When he arrived at the place, came and looked and passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was. And when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. And he set him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. On the next day, when he departed, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper and said to him, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I come again, I will repay you. But then Jesus said to the man, so which of these 3 do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? And he said, he who showed mercy on him. Then Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. Go and do likewise. It's a simple story. It's a story of someone being compassionate towards someone else. So the first person in that story that noticed the man was a priest. And he passed by without helping. And the priest was the member of the Jewish priesthood, someone today we would call a rabbi. And then the Levite, the second person who passed by without helping, was a member of the Hebrew tribe of Levi, especially that part of which provided assistance to the priest in the worship in a Jewish temple. So he was definitely a leader within the Jewish faith. It was a Samaritan who helped the man who had been beaten and robbed. To explain the origin of the Samaritans, we must go back to the days of the kings. After King Solomon ruled over the Israelites, who were seen as God's people, the unwise actions of his son Rehoboam in the 10th century of the Common Era, before the Common Era, led to a schism in which the kingdom was split into two, into the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah, each with their own king. About 250 years later, the northern kingdom of Israel fell to the Assyrians. They had come from the north and invaded. And many of the people of Israel were led off as captives, but some remained in the land where they were, and they intermarried with the foreigners. So these were half Jewish, half Gentile people, and they became known as the Samaritans. Now, when Jews in the South were driven from their home by invaders and relocated somewhere else, they kept separate. They kept their faith. Intermarrying was greatly frowned upon. So these Samaritans, being of a mix of already spiritually corrupt Israelites and pagan foreigners, also created a religion for themselves. And the Jews considered this heresy. The Samaritans established as their center of worship a temple on Mount Gerizim, claiming it was where Moses had originally intended for the Israelites to worship. They had their own unique version of the 5 books written by Moses, the Pentateuch, but rejected the writings of the prophets and Jewish traditions. They saw themselves as the true descendants of Israel and preservers of the true religion, while considering the Jerusalem temple and the Levitical priesthood illegitimate. So to the Jews, a Samaritan was more revolting than a Gentile, who they considered to be pagan. Samaritans were half-breeds who defiled the true religion. Gentiles didn't know any better, but Samaritans did and violated Jewish law anyway. That's who a Samaritan was. So I found my the Golden Bible Atlas. I love this book. And I'm going to attempt to show you, if I can, a map. I don't know if you can see that very well. But in this map, the top part in the pink is Galilee. That's where Jesus was born. Then this center part here is the northern and the southern. Samaria was right here. Samaria was right there in the middle. When travelers would travel from the south to go north, they would actually travel miles out of their way to cross the Jordan River so that they would not have to travel through the area of Samaria and encounter Samaritans. That is how much the Jewish people felt separate, that the Samaritans were definitely the other. So let's look back at this parable. Jesus could have set this story up with a Jew, an Israelite, being the hero of the story, being a good neighbor to someone along the road who'd been robbed, a stranger, and how kind to do so. But the story had an even greater impact to those listening at the time. The hero of the story was a person from an outcast group of people, someone whose ancestors had defiled the true religion of the Jews, someone from the fringes, someone to be avoided at all cost, someone who a traveler would go miles and miles out of the way to avoid, not just cross the street, cross the country to not run into a Samaritan. The hero was a Samaritan, lower than even the Gentiles. Now knowing the history and a little bit of the geography, and the prejudice of this ancient time, we can understand how the parable of the Good Samaritan would have shocked the audience. Jesus did that. He often shocked the listeners, perhaps to get them to pay attention. That person was the hero, the detested other. Who is that for us today? Who is the Samaritan in our world? You know, we're liberal when it comes to race and sexual orientation and marital status, even financial status. But who do we avoid? Who would we cross the street to avoid on the sidewalk? Maybe someone from a different political party. Are they now the pariah? Can you extend the hand of friendship to the poor, the hungry, the lonely, but rule out a Republican or a Democrat, or heaven forbid, an independent? For a while during COVID, it was those who refused to be vaccinated. We'd carve out those people who had medical reasons for not getting the vaccine, but everybody else, or not wear a mask. How dare they be so loosey-goosey with our health, with our life? Is it that pro-lifer or that pro-choicer? That military person, or that absolutely against the military person, or that gun owner, or the person openly opposed to gun ownership, or that person down the street that doesn't take care of their house or their lawn and makes it bad for the whole neighborhood? Or is it that 20-item person in the 12-item checkout line? We can carve someone or a group of people out from our good nature for any number of reasons. So I invite you to imagine for a moment someone from that group of people that you may be carving out from your goodwill, someone that you've carved out of your heart, someone you don't want to think about, a group of people you just want to forget that they exist. Imagine seeing them coming upon a person in need, a person nothing like them, simply another human being in need. Now see them responding with kindness and compassion and generosity. See them going out of their way to help someone in great need. See them as a true part of the one human family, of the divine oneness of which we are all a part. It softens your heart, doesn't it? All of a sudden, those other things, political party, personal preferences, 20 items in a 12-item line, doesn't seem like such a big deal. They're human. You are human. We are all human. This week, especially celebrating this World Day of Friendship, I invite you to consider, who are your Samaritans? Who have you carved out of your heart? Who do you see as the bad guys? And consider inviting them in, opening your heart to them as individuals, not as a part of something in opposition to you and your ideas. Try it. Get out a piece of paper or imagine it in your mind and do this exercise every day for this week. Write down that person or that group of people. Imagine them going out of their way, helping someone. Make up a wonderful story about how generous of heart they were. And then the next day, make up a different heartwarming story about something they did. Maya Angelou said, hate, it has caused a lot of problems in this world, but it has not solved one yet. Extend the hand and the heart of friendship with your love. It always begins from within you, then flows outward as the divine expression as you. And so you are, and so it is. God bless you.